I was 34 when I bought the townhouse, a small two-bedroom on a quiet street in Denver. It wasn't fancy, just warm and steady. I saved for years, picked the place myself, and signed a stack of papers that felt like a promise. For the first time, I had a door that was mine. Jenna came into my life fast. We dated for a year that felt like a sprint. Movies, weekend drives, inside jokes that made no sense to anyone else. When she asked if she could move in, I said yes. 6 months later, her boxes filled the hallway. She hugged me and said we were building a future. I believed her. The first months were easy. We picked out a couch. Sundays meant naps and half-finished shows. We talked about travel, about a dog, and about paint colors. It felt like a life starting. But slow changes have a way of hiding in plain sight. Her phone, once open on the counter, got a new lock screen. She took calls in the bedroom with the door closed. Plans with her friends stopped including me. If I asked how the night went, she said fine and moved on. The look she gave me shifted too, less soft, more like she was measuring what was hers. It didn't happen all at once, but I could feel it. One evening, I came home and saw the signs all at once. Half my closet was empty. A gym bag sat on the couch, stuffed with shirts I hadn't folded that way. A couple of my framed photos were set aside, face down. Jenna stood in the living room with her arms crossed, her voice steady and her eyes steady. "Ethan," she said, "I think it's time you find somewhere else to stay. This is my home now." I froze in place, keys still in my hand. "You're home." She didn't blink. "Yeah, you're always at work. You barely live here anyway. This place feels more mine than yours. I'm taking over the lease." I almost laughed, but nothing about it was funny. There was no lease to take. I bought the house. My name was on every page that mattered, and hers was on none of them. Still, I kept my face calm. There was a low hum in my ears, like the fridge had grown louder. I set my keys on the table. "You're serious," I said. "Not a challenge, just a line in the air between us." She nodded. "You can crash with your brother for a while. I'll pack your things. I want a fresh start here." The words fit together too smoothly, like she had practiced them. Maybe she had. Little pieces clicked into place. The late nights, the new password, the way she hid her phone when I walked past. A picture formed, and I didn't like it. I could have raised my voice. I could have argued about fairness, time, and promises. I didn't. Instead, something in me settled. I felt clear. I reached for my bag under the side table and pulled out a thin envelope I'd been carrying for a few weeks. I placed it on the counter, then slid it toward her with one finger. "Okay," I said. "But before I leave, you might want to read the fine print." Her brow creased. "What are you talking about?" I didn't answer. The house felt different now. Same walls, same rugs, but I couldn't hear us in it anymore. I picked up my laptop and my car keys. I didn't grab much else. There would be time for that later. I opened the front door and looked back once. She stood in the middle of the room, the envelope between us, like a line she hadn't seen until now. I stepped outside and pulled the door closed behind me. The air was cool. The street was quiet. Somewhere down the block, a porch light clicked on. I sat in my car and stared at the dark windows of the townhouse. I wasn't angry. I wasn't sad. I was done. When I left that night, I didn't pack much, just my laptop, car keys, and the calm that comes after you've stopped pretending everything's fine. Jenna probably thought I'd be back, that I'd argue or beg, maybe sleep in the car for a night and return to talk things out. She never realized I'd already seen what she'd been planning. 2 days earlier, I'd opened her tablet, left unlocked, maybe by mistake, maybe by arrogance, and read a string of messages that ended whatever doubt I had left. She'd been texting Kyle, her ex, the same guy she once called a mistake I'll never repeat. Only now, they were talking about their new place. Asterisk, once Ethan's gone, we can make it ours. I'll move your stuff in slowly, he won't even notice. Asterisk, she noticed everything, except the fact that I was still the owner. Every message read like a plan already set in motion. And I didn't confront her that day. I called my lawyer instead. By the time I walked out that night, everything was already in motion. She had no idea the house she tried to claim was one signature away from kicking her out of it. The next morning, I parked across the street, coffee in hand, watching through the windshield. She came out onto the porch with trash bags, asterisk my asterisk clothes stuffed inside like old clutter. She carried them down the steps, one by one, tossing them beside the bins. It was surreal, watching someone treat your life like debris. Then a white sedan pulled into the driveway. A man stepped out, dressed neatly, clipboard in hand. Jenna turned, frowning, wiping her palms on her jeans before walking over. "Yes? Can I help you?" He flipped a page and glanced up. "Ma'am, I'm here to deliver a formal notice of eviction. You are required to vacate the premises within 24 hours. I could see her lips part slightly, like she wasn't sure if she'd heard him right. "Eviction? No, there's been a mistake. This is my home. He pointed to the document. According to county records, this property is owned by Ethan Brooks. You are not listed on the deed or any lease. You have 24 hours to leave the premises. She blinked fast, confusion melting into panic. No, I've been living here for almost a year. My name should be. Ma'am, he interrupted politely. I'm just here to deliver notice. He handed her the envelope, nodded once, and walked back to his car. From where I sat, I could see her standing frozen on the porch, the letter open in her hands, eyes darting across each line. She turned toward the street then, scanning the road like she knew I was somewhere nearby. A few seconds later, my phone buzzed. Asterisk Ethan, what is this? Why are they saying I have to leave? Asterisk. I didn't reply. Another text came through. Asterisk, please answer me. This doesn't make sense. You can't do this. Asterisk. Still nothing. I scrolled through my photos and found the screenshots, her messages with Kyle, the ones that spelled out her entire plan. I forwarded them to her without a word. A minute passed. Then another. She started calling. 1 ring. 2. 3. I watched her name flash across my screen again and again. I let it ring out every time. Across the street, she sat on the porch steps, the phone pressed to her ear, eyes wide, fingers trembling slightly around the edge of the notice. The quiet between us had finally spoken louder than anything I could have said. As I pulled the car into gear, I caught one last glimpse of her through the mirror, still sitting there, papers in her lap, phone at her ear, looking like she was finally realizing what it meant to lose something real. That evening, she tried again, texts, calls, a voice message I didn't open. But by then, everything that needed saying had already been written down, sealed, and hand-delivered. She had played her move. Now she was facing the fine print. By the time the sun went down, my phone was full of missed calls and messages. Jenna's name filled the screen again and again, each one more desperate than the last. Asterisk Ethan, please, can we talk? I didn't mean it like that. I was upset. I didn't think you'd actually, asterisk. I stopped reading. She wasn't upset. She was caught. Everything she'd said, every decision she'd made, was planned. The only thing she hadn't planned was getting caught in her own game. Later that night, one final message came through. I can't believe you do this to me after everything we've been through. I typed back one line. You did this to yourself. And that was the end of it. By morning, she was gone. The street was quiet, the driveway empty, and the house was finally mine again. When I opened the front door, the silence hit harder than I expected. Her perfume still lingered faintly in the hallway, and her side of the closet hung empty. I thought I'd feel relief, maybe even triumph. Instead, it was something quieter. The weight was gone, but so was the noise. I walked from room to room, trying to see what was left. A broken picture frame lay under the TV stand. A few dishes were missing. There was a dent in the bedroom wall, like something had been thrown in anger before she left. She hadn't just packed up, she'd made sure to leave reminders of how things ended. That week, I took some time off work, not for rest, but to reset. I repaired what I could, replaced what I needed. And in between, I sat in the living room, trying to process how love had turned into something that cold, that entitled. When you trust someone completely, it's easy to mistake comfort for connection. I'd shared plans, passwords, memories, things you can't return once given. And she'd used every bit of it like leverage. But the longer I sat in that quiet, the clearer things became. I wasn't angry anymore. Anger kept her here. What I needed was distance. So I cleaned, repainted, and donated what she left behind. Slowly, the space started to feel different. Not just empty, but open. Weeks passed. The house became a place again, not a reminder. Then one night, near midnight, my phone lit up. Asterisk Ethan, please. I don't have anywhere to go. Kyle kicked me out. Can we talk? Asterisk. I stared at the message for a long time. The irony wasn't lost on me. The same woman who told me to find somewhere else to stay was now asking me for a place to land. I locked the phone and set it face down on the table. Some lessons don't come from arguments or revenge. They come from silence. The next morning, I brewed coffee, stepped outside, and noticed something odd. A figure sat on the porch steps, head down, duffel bag beside her. It was Jenna. Her hair was messy, her eyes red, her voice small. Ethan, she whispered, standing slowly. I just need a few days. Please. I looked at her, not with anger, but with clarity. The past replayed in my mind. Not just the betrayal, but the moment she looked at me and said, "This is my home now." That single sentence had changed everything. She'd chosen her side, her plan, her version of home. Now she stood in front of the one she threw away. Why here? I asked quietly. You made it clear this wasn't mine anymore. Her voice cracked. Kyle and it didn't work out. He said he wasn't ready for something serious. I made a mistake. A mistake can be forgiven. But a choice like hers? That's something else entirely. And as I stood there on the porch, coffee in hand, I realized something. Sometimes, closure isn't found in confrontation. It's in standing firm when the person who hurt you finally understands what they've lost. She stood there, clutching the strap of her duffel bag like it was the only thing holding her together. Her eyes were tired, her voice soft, and the confidence she once carried was completely gone. "Ethan," she said again, "I just need a few days. I don't have anywhere else to go." For a moment, I didn't say anything. I looked at her, the same person who told me, in this exact doorway, that I should find somewhere else to stay. The same person who tried to erase me from my own home. "Why here?" I asked, my voice calm. "You made it clear this wasn't mine anymore." Her shoulders sagged. "Kyle and we broke up. He said he wasn't ready for something serious. I don't have family nearby, and my friends, they've all moved on. I made a mistake." A mistake. That word hung between us like it could somehow erase what she'd done. But what she did wasn't an accident. It was a choice. She wanted control. She wanted the house, the comfort, the life I built, without me in it. "Jenna," I said quietly, "you didn't trip and fall into this. You planned it. You told me to leave. You were ready to move your ex in before my clothes were out of the closet. You don't get to rewrite what happened just because it hurts now." She looked down, tears gathering, hands shaking slightly. "I didn't think you'd actually evict me," she whispered. I let out a dry breath. "You thought I'd just walk away from a house I bought? You thought you could take everything and I'd say nothing?" Her silence said enough. The truth was written all over her face. She didn't think I'd stand up for myself. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The wind moved through the trees, and the morning felt colder than usual. I wasn't angry, not anymore. Just tired. After a long pause, I said, "There's a motel 2 blocks down. It's not much, but it's a roof. That's all I can offer." Her eyes lifted to mine. "Please, Ethan, just a few days. I'll stay out of your way." I shook my head. "No, Jenna. You told me I didn't belong here. You made sure I felt unwelcome in my own home. You can't unsay that now." She swallowed hard, then nodded slowly. "I'll go," she said, her voice breaking. I hope one day you'll forgive me." I didn't reply. Forgiveness wasn't something I could hand out just because she finally felt the consequences. It wasn't about revenge, it was about peace. She picked up her bag, adjusted the strap, and walked down the driveway. Her steps were slow, heavy. I watched her go until she turned the corner, disappearing. When I finally stepped back inside, the house felt different again, lighter, quieter, peaceful. That night, I sat by the window with a cup of coffee, staring out at the empty street. For the first time in months, I wasn't waiting for a fight, or an apology, or an explanation. I was just still. I thought about everything I'd done to try to make her happy. The small compromises, the moments I let things slide, the times I convinced myself love meant patience even when it meant pain. But real love doesn't ask you to give up your peace just to keep someone else comfortable. And now, sitting alone, I didn't feel foolish. I felt free. Still, as quiet as the night was, I knew stories like this rarely end neatly. There's always one last twist, one final ripple. Because karma doesn't forget. A week later, I was back into a rhythm. Work, coffee, quiet evenings. The house finally sounded like itself again. No slammed doors, no drawn-out sighs, no tension tucked into every conversation. Just silence, and the soft comfort of starting over. Then one afternoon, I got a call from an old friend we both knew. His voice sounded cautious, like he wasn't sure how I'd take the news. "Hey man, you heard about Jenna?" I leaned back in my chair. "No. What happened?" "She got fired. Something about using company funds for personal stuff. They're looking into it. And Kyle, he's already seeing someone else." I let out a slow breath. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. There was no victory in it. Just the quiet understanding that choices come back around. She'd built her life on manipulation and shortcuts, and sooner or later, that foundation always cracks. That weekend, I stood in the middle of the living room, sunlight spilling across the floor, and decided it was time. The house had been good to me. It sheltered me, taught me, hurt me, and healed me, but it was tied to too many ghosts. I wanted a place that didn't hold memories of betrayal in the walls. So I called a realtor. Within days, a for sale sign sat on the lawn. Packing took longer than I expected, not because of the stuff, but because every object carried a story. A chipped mug, a photo frame, and the blanket she insisted on buying. In one box, buried under some paperwork, I found a photo from closing day, Jenna and me on the front porch, arms around each other, smiling like the world had already promised us forever. For a second, I considered throwing it away. Instead, I slipped it into a drawer, not as something to miss, but as something to remember. Never hand someone the keys to your world before they've earned the right to stay. A few months later, I'd settled into a smaller apartment downtown. Nothing fancy, just enough. I learned to enjoy the quiet again. Morning walks, music echoing off bare walls, weekends that didn't end in arguments. Then one evening, I stopped by the grocery store on my way home. I was standing in line when I heard a voice behind me. Ethan. I turned. Jenna stood there, thinner, worn down, eyes softer than I'd ever seen them. The arrogance she once wore like armor was gone. Hey, I said, keeping my voice even. I just wanted to say, she hesitated, taking a small breath. I'm sorry. For everything. I studied her face. It wasn't the same woman who stood in my living room claiming the house as hers. This one looked like someone who'd learned what loss really feels like. I know, I said quietly. I hope you find what you're looking for. She nodded, smiled faintly, eyes glassy. You deserve better. I hope you found peace. I did, I said simply. She gave one last small smile and turned to leave. No dramatics, just two people who once shared a life, now walking separate paths. I paid for my things, stepped into the cool night air, and drove home with the windows down. City lights flashed across the windshield. For the first time in a long while, my chest didn't feel heavy. It felt light. People say heartbreak is the end of something, but it isn't. Sometimes it's the clearing before something new grows. Losing Jenna wasn't a tragedy. It was freedom I didn't know I needed. And peace? It isn't loud. It's the quiet you earn when you finally stop fighting for the wrong person. I appreciate you watching till the end. Hit that subscribe button and stay tuned for more content.